What's up everybody, it's Basara here, and today I am going to be analyzing the main conflicts and characters of Book 4 in Fire Emblem Heroes. This is the first story in Heroes that I really felt like had a lot of depth to it, and I've had an urge to discuss it ever since I read through it, start to finish, for the first time last week. Despite the story taking place in almost exclusively a dream world, the themes and conflicts are very realistic and cover topics related to the overall mindsets and actions of human beings. Before I get into it, I want to apologize for no visuals on this video with the exception of one segment. I am not experienced with video editing, and just using a face cam while I read off a script would have looked very awkward. I decided to just use a black screen and treat this almost like a podcast where you can listen in the background while you do something else. I'm going to start this video by giving a quick summary of the story, where I cover the key events as well as topics I will be analyzing. This is for people who didn't understand the story well, need a refresher, or have never read it at all. I will have a timestamp in the description for each segment in case you are only interested in certain segments and don't need the story summary. With all that out of the way, let's get started. Our story starts off with Henriette instructing the Order of Heroes to investigate an issue where everyone is stuck in an eternal sleep. The gang move out and fall under the curse, entering a dream world. They all find each other, but the summoner is nowhere to be found. They meet Peony, a fairy in charge of gentle, sweet dreams, and use her guidance to find the king of the dream world, Freyja, who will be able to wake everyone up. Throughout the story, we hear dialogue from flashbacks, unaware of who exactly is speaking. As they approach King Freyja, they meet Triandra, who is a fairy in charge of scary nightmares. They defeat her and meet Freyja, who instructs them to reach a gate and blow the horn he has given them to wake everyone up. The gang make their way to the gate and are stopped by Plumeria, who is also from the nightmare section of the dream world and is in charge of lustful dreams. Thank you, Plumeria. Anyways, they defeat Plumeria and blow the horn. Everyone wakes up to find Surtur alive. Everyone except for Alphonse has forgotten the summoner, further complicating things. Alphonse believes reality is being influenced by his fears and eventually meets up with Peony again. She dispels the nightmares and brings everyone's memory back, then informs them that Freyja has been taken to the nightmare realm, causing this issue. They decide to go to the nightmare realm to save him in reality. They run into Veronica and she asks Alphonse about her brother, but he can't remember anything they did together in the past. They meet up with Mirabilis, a fairy in charge of daydreams, and ask for her help to fall asleep so they can save Freyja. They are interrupted by Triandra and a nightmare of hell that they defeat. They travel further and the Order of Heroes goes to sleep while Veronica fights off the nightmares. Alphonse's dream is immediately corrupted by Plumeria, who has the girls around him confess their love to him, hoping Alphonse will give in to temptation, if you catch my drift. All I'm saying is that if she gives me a lustful dream with Freyja, I am not arguing against it. Anyway, Plumeria is defeated and everyone goes back to normal on the quest to save Freyja. Sharena shares her stories of the dream world as a child and talks about a changeling who looked and acted just like her that would play with her. Freyja heals Plumeria after a fight and explains how Plumeria was once a little girl in reality who was abandoned by her mother in a well, and Freyja gave her a new life to escape the sadness since no one would miss her. Freyja then attempts to merge power with Freyja so they can rule reality together using the binding necklace, which he refuses since he wants the mortals to have their reality. He claims Freyja is no longer someone he loves if she will hurt others, but she explains how she only did what was necessary to save the dream world, as it was being ripped apart from those who rejected it. We then learn Triandra's mother had a boyfriend that abused her and her little sister, eventually leading Triandra to kill him. Triandra then starts a new life as a fairy to escape reality. Freyja uses the binding necklace to take Freyja's power, giving her complete control of dreams and reality. Everyone retreats and Freyja explains how Freyja was mocked for a mark on her face as a child and only he comforted her. This left her to only ever love him. Even as she grew older and became more beautiful, she rejected everyone except her brother. Freyja decides the only way to cut off Freyja's power she got from him is to kill himself. The Order of Heroes kill him, causing Freyja to scream in sadness over losing her brother. Veronica wakes everyone up, but Freyja somehow still exists in reality. Freyja tells Mirabilis that she was ignored by her mother and always hungry. Then Freyja turned her into a fairy, where she still daydreams of food to this day. We then learn that 5 children played together in the dream world, and 4 drank nectar to become the fairies that we know today and save the dream world, while Shirena escaped to remain immortal. Shirena is unsure whether her or her friend is the original Shirena, since they constantly switch places as changelings. Plumeria fights for her new identity as a fairy, but loses, and we learn that she chose to drink the nectar to become a hero her mother would be proud of. Alphonse realizes that since Freyja has control, they must have been dreaming this entire time, ever since they left Henriette at the start. When they blew the horn and awoke chapters earlier, they actually were still dreaming that they met Veronica and Mirabilis and everyone else. They go searching for the gate to blow the horn and return to reality where Freyja will have no control. Alphonse has a dream of a world made of steel, which is our real world, the world of the Summoner. We fight Triandra and learn that she is the older sister of Peony and drank the nectar to become a hero that could make her sister happy. The Order of Heroes reaches the gate and blows the horn, but it doesn't work and the Summoner appears and fights them. They win and take off the hood to reveal Alphonse. We then learn that the Alphonse we have been traveling with this whole time is the Summoner dreaming that he is Alphonse, and Freyja reveals that if they return to reality, the real Alphonse is actually dead for defeating Hell in the previous book. They now must make a choice whether to stay in the dream world to have Alphonse, or to return to reality without him and allow Freyja to take away the lives of the fairies. Shirena and Peony discuss how they were identical children trading places, and Peony assures Shirena that they are the same, so it doesn't matter who was the original Shirena. Peony then tells Shirena they must return to reality even if Peony will die from them doing so. We defeat Freyja and return to reality. Freyja was bluffing and Alphonse is still alive in reality. Freyja decides to give her life to save Plumeria and Triandra rather than erase the fairies. Loki appears when we wake up and implies only her and the Summoner remember what happened in the dream world. We defeat her and Anna announces a surprise visitor who is Peony. The ending cutscene shows Lif and Thrasir working together with Plumeria and Triandra to eventually fight the Order of Heroes. Now that I have gone over the plot of the story, it's time to get into the main point of this video, which is to discuss the conflicting ideologies of the characters within the story and the morality of the actions taken. Let's start with the main conflict between Freyja and Freyr, which is faith in humanity. As the King of Dreams, Freyr has been exposed to the nice dreams of mankind. He sees the good in people on a daily basis. Meanwhile, Freyja is the Queen of Nightmares. She sees the darkest part of mankind and therefore perceives them as evil. This isn't the only reason why Freyja sees humans as evil, however. As Freyr explains, Freyja was a social reject and bullied for her appearance, and was only appreciated once she lost the mark on her face and became more beautiful. This has caused Freyja to see beings other than her brother as shallow and cold, unwilling to give her a chance for something so trivial and out of her control. Almost anyone can relate to this experience of feeling rejected and abandoned, and those who have experienced this know how painful it can be and understand where Freyja is coming from. When she turns the 4 children into fairies, she also sees the worst parts of humanity. She takes 5 children who have extremely dark pasts and terrible parents who didn't care about them. This only enforces the idea in Freyja's mind that humans are evil at their core. This brings me to the next conflict in the story worth discussing, which is the morality of Freyja turning those children into fairies. Freyr sees Freyja's actions as wrong since she is interfering with the lives of mortals, while Freyja saw her actions as necessary to save her homeland and to give those children a better life. Both of them have a point in this situation. Freyja knew that none of those children would miss their former life, and that no one would miss them either, so she sees the transformation as a positive for everyone. Triandra and Plumeria agree with Freyja's sentiment and thank her for doing this, while Peony and Mirabilis feel that their freedom was taken from them. Peony's perspective is that she may have been able to use the dream world to escape the harshness of reality, but even the sweetest dreams must eventually come to an end. Plumeria feels the opposite, believing that her new life as a fairy can last forever if the Order of Heroes doesn't stand in her way. This difference in ideology mainly comes from the different types of leadership in the dream and nightmare realms. Freyr was disappointed in Freyja for turning the children into fairies, so he isolated himself from everybody, including her, only existing in a dream within a dream. He doesn't want to interfere with the lives of these children as Freyja had, so he leaves them to their own devices and rules the realm alone. Freyja, on the other hand, takes a much more hands-on approach. She is constantly with Plumeria and Triandra, comforting them and showing them love. She knows these children had terrible parents, so she assumes the role of a mother and tries to give them the happy life she feels they deserved. This is why Peony and Mirabilis are far more content with losing their lives as fairies compared to Plumeria and Triandra. The nightmare fairies now have a mother figure who gave them love and happiness, while the dream fairies continued to feel alone with Freyja in isolation. Even though Freyja claims her love for Plumeria and Triandra was fake up until the very end, we all know that this is simply not true, whether Freyja realizes it or not. If it were true, she would not sacrifice her life to save Plumeria and Triandra at the end. She may have only loved her brother at first, but taking the role of a mother over time caused her to eventually love those two as her own children. Her desire to make them happy so they will do her bidding changed to a genuine desire to see them pleased with their new life. All of this has contributed towards an ideology in the nightmare realm that dreams can last forever so they can always be together. Peony and Mirabilis, on the other hand, have no strong attachment to Freyr and their new lives, which is why they don't feel a need to maintain an eternal dream. The final conflict I want to cover is an internal conflict that Freyja goes through on her own. After being mocked, seeing the darkest parts of humans through their nightmares, and seeing how horrible the parents were to the fairies, she has a desire for revenge against mortals. She hates those who treated her and her fairy children poorly and feels that they must pay. She hopes Freyr will combine with her through the binding necklace so they can conquer the mortals together. When Freyr refuses, Freyja is put in a difficult position. She has to choose whether to accept her brother's decision or to take his power and rule herself. With how much she loves her brother for what he has done for her, she doesn't want to go against his will, but knows she has to in order to get the revenge she desires. Her choice to take Freyr's power for herself, in my opinion, shows that she now loves her fairy children more than her brother, even if she doesn't realize it. She wants revenge on humanity for her sake after being mocked, but she also wants revenge for the fairies she has created. Her willingness to put justice for them over the will of her brother shows a deeper love for the fairies than she lets on. In the case of Peony and Triandra, their mother chose an abusive man over her children. She allowed the man to lock them outside in the freezing cold with nothing but rags. Freyja essentially has to make the same decision here. Will she choose the man she loves, her brother, or will she choose her new fairy children? Not wanting to be like the horrible mother of Peony and Triandra, she chooses her fairy children as her top priority. She wants to be a motherly figure to these children and knows she must put them above all else in order to give them the life she always wanted them to have. It's an ironic situation where both Freyja and Peony and Triandra's mother make opposite decisions in this scenario, yet both end up becoming villains in their own way. It demonstrates the importance of context and how there is very rarely a clear-cut right or wrong answer. Despite the dream and nightmare realms being very black and white, the story is filled with gray morality. Freyja is manipulative and uses the fairies to do her bidding, but she is still loved dearly by Plumeria and Triandra for giving them a better life full of love. Freyja, on the other hand, does not interfere with their lives, but Peony and Mirabilis are not completely satisfied with their new life as a result. It's a story that appears as good versus evil on the surface, but all parties have good points that can make someone willing to root for them. Humans are both good and evil, making both Freyja and Freyja's perspectives right to a certain extent. What made Freyja the antagonist was not her ideology or motivations, but her desire to conquer all of humanity regardless of the consequences. All she needed was one friend back when she had that mark on her face, one person who would give her a chance other than her brother, but no one else ever came. In this next segment, I want to go over character design. I'm not an artist myself, but I am good at analyzing stories and how character designs fit with the narrative. This will be my only segment in the video with visuals, so I can show the designs of the characters on screen while I discuss them. Let's start with Freyja. Outside of being super hot, there's two really intelligent decisions made when designing her. The first was to make her look motherly while intimidating at the same time. This is a sharp contrast that shows Freyja's desire to conquer humanity while still being a loving mother figure towards Plumeria and Triandra. She looks comforting, but can also send a chill down your spine. It's a hard mix to pull off, and they do it excellently. The other reason is her beauty. The main struggle in Freyja's life was being mocked for her appearance, and making her beautiful now illustrates how the perspective of others towards her completely changed as she developed. It's the main driving force for Freyja and reassures her of the shallowness of mankind with her experiencing it personally. Freyja is also interesting design-wise for two reasons. The first is the butterfly pattern on his clothing. The clothes are very light. The colors on the clothes, are very light and warm and contrast perfectly with the dark colors of Freyja's dress. Another interesting thing to note is how he always has his eyes closed. Some most likely interpret this as him always being somewhat asleep as the King of Dreams, but I see a much more deep interpretation of this detail. When Freyja turns the children into fairies, he isolates himself, as I mentioned before. Rather than confronting the situation at hand, he essentially closes his eyes to the situation metaphorically. He turns a blind eye and allows Freyja and the fairies to do as they please until Freyja eventually captures him to steal his power for herself. Next up is Peony, who has a lot of interesting details. The first is her smiling face and her neutral art, as well as her blonde hair the same color as Sharena's. This upbeat attitude and visual similarities show a connection to Sharena at the very start and drive home the idea that they are essentially the same person. Peony also mentions a memory where Sharena gave her a necklace of flowers, and her fairy form has a flower around her neck as a reference to that. I also enjoy the contrast in Peony and Triandra's designs and attitudes. From the start, Peony was a cheerful child, and Triandra was angry at her situation, so much so that she killed the man who abused them. The designs of the fairies illustrate their true nature. Triandra was loving towards her sister, but had an inner darkness caused by her past that is put on full display in her fairy form. All of these designs tell you a lot about the characters before they even say a word, and I felt that it was worth acknowledging the level of detail and thought that was put into the story and its characters. In conclusion, I wanted to make this video since this was the first book in Heroes that I got seriously invested in from start to finish. It's a goofy concept for a story since anything is possible in a dream world, but they managed to tackle real-world ideology on mankind and dark themes such as abuse and manipulation. It's an ambitious story for 13 chapters in a mobile game, but it is done extremely well for what they had to work with. It's also the first story in Heroes, in my opinion, that had a main antagonist that was relatable and possible to root for. The story manages to take the concept of a dream world and endless possibilities and to make it into something touching and thought-provoking. I hope you enjoyed this analysis. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe for the algorithm. If you want to see me analyze the other books in the future, let me know you like this video. Until next time, see ya.